And then you looked at her and maybe you thought, God, I love the way you chew that apple. So crunchy.
Welcome everybody, I'm Matt. Remember to subscribe to get notifications for new videos on personal growth and motivation. We're going to be doing something a little bit different in today's video. There's an amazing public speaker called David JP Phillips who's been posting public speaking reaction videos recently. So for example, he watches say Elon Musk or some famous YouTubers, and then he breaks down their talks about what they did well, what we can learn from them, and gives some suggestions on how they could be even better speakers. So I thought, well, wouldn't it be interesting if I did a reaction video on one of his talks? Now, he's clearly a master public speaker. I have so much to learn from this guy, but what better way to improve our public speaking skills than by learning from the best? Hopefully there'll be a few insights that we can then use in our own public speaking to make us better communicators so that we can persuade, motivate, and inspire others to be better. The video I'm going to be reviewing or reacting to, it's a Tedx talk he did with over 2 million views. So obviously this guy really knows what he's doing. I'm excited to watch this video and see what kind of insights we can pull out of it.
In 2009, a man, a journalist, by the name Rob Walker wanted to find out is storytelling really the most powerful tool of all?
Okay, I know that was just after the first sentence, but I have to stop it there already. This guy is so good. That might have sounded like just any old simple sentence, but there were so many things he was doing there. I feel like I could talk about it for 10 minutes. The first great thing he's done is he dove straight into the story. There was no introduction of, hi, I'm David, this is what I'm going to be talking about. Sometimes those kind of introductions we can become a bit numb to, and we switch off for. But by literally picking us up and just dropping us in the middle of a story, in 2009, a man, a journalist, he's immediately grabbed their attention. The second thing he does is he has great use of pauses. He doesn't say in 2009, a man, a journalist. He says in 2009, a man, a journalist. This variation of tempo with the pauses creates more drama, and it brings the audience in more. It makes it more engaging to listen to. The second thing it does is whenever we normally hear a speaker for the first time, you're kind of trying to size them up a little bit at the beginning. You're kind of wondering, how confident is this person? How comfortable is this person on stage? And usually if you're quite nervous or anxious, it's very difficult to use pauses. You normally end up speaking too fast. So if you're on stage like him and you're pausing straight away, it really makes him come across as a very confident, very comfortable speaker. The next thing he does is, you see the furrowing of the brow there?
By the name Rob Walker wanted to find out is...
He says he wanted to find out and he furrows the brow. So why? It's a subtle body language cue. Why do we normally furrow our brow? It's when something's troubling us. You know, something's troubling you, or something's bothering you. And when he does that, he draws us in because we automatically start wondering, well, what's wrong? What's the problem? And in this case as well, it almost feels like he's being inquisitive, or he's being skeptical of this question of, is storytelling the most powerful tool? So this makes it come across like he's really thinking about it, like he's not taking it at face value. Next, when he says he wanted to find out, he does a pause and a glance upwards.
By the name Rob Walker wanted to find out is...
Normally we look up when we're thinking. And because he's thinking during this speech, it makes it seem like he's almost improvising a little bit, like it's a bit more off the cuff. Even though it actually suggests the opposite with this. This guy is so good. Every little subtle cue he's intentionally put there. It's there for a reason. So he probably inserted it intentionally to make the whole speech seem less rehearsed. And finally, he ends with a rhetorical question.
Is storytelling really the most powerful tool of all?
So how is a rhetorical question beneficial? Well, when you ask a question to the audience, they can't help but answer it in their minds. And it almost doesn't matter what answer they give. The point is, if they do answer it, It's making them more engaged with the speaker. They're becoming more invested in the talk. They're going from maybe more of a spectator role to more of an active participant. And by mentioning that, and by throwing the question out of storytelling being such a powerful tool, it also gets us looking for an answer. Why is it? It plants those seeds in our mind from the very beginning of the talk. Wow, okay, that was a lot for one sentence. I'm probably going to take about 12 hours to react to this video at this rate. But the point is, it's so crazy how we can pack so many elements into just one sentence. There's so many parts that we can incorporate into our own communication.
How can you and I go to the movies and pay good money to watch movies like James Bond, who are absolutely unrealistic? And we sit there, we enjoy the movie, and some of us, we really enjoy the movie.
What he does really well here is the congruence between what he says, how he says it, and what he does. He says we enjoy the movie, which is positive language, but how does he say it? He says it in an excited way. We enjoy the movie. And then what does he do? As he says it, he does this little hop step and a handshake.
We really enjoy the movie.
So there's this congruence between what he says, how he says it, and what he does. All of this just adds to the believability of what he's doing.
And we leave the theater going like, God, what a man. I would like to be more like him. I'd like to walk like him. I'd like to talk like him. I like Bond.
Then he does some role play. He says, what a man. He beats his chest. He shows vocal intonation, stands up straight. He's acting out what it would be like to be Bond. He's almost like a performer. It's just such a more powerful way of portraying it.
Now, falling in love resembles a good story. Do you remember the last time you fell in love? Do you? Good for you. It's a beautiful feeling, isn't it? Do you remember how you longed and how you yearned and how you dreamt? And then you looked at her and maybe you thought, God, I love the way you chew that apple. So crunchy. Oh, and the way you slurp that tea just over the edge, you know. Oh, it's so sexy. Love it. And then about 13 months later, when you biochemically fall out of love, 13 months later, on an average, you fall out of love. Suddenly, you find yourself sitting in the sofa. And you go, Jesus Christ, where did this thing come from? Oh my God, and where are my friends? This is a weird thing. And then suddenly you hear a sound. You go like, what's that? And you go over to the kitchen and you look and you go like, oh, it's you. You're eating an apple there. Could you just keep that down just a little bit? Yeah. You're kind of spraying the table there. Please don't. And you sit down comfortably again, and just a minute later you hear somebody drinking tea from the kitchen going, and suddenly this is all annoying to you. Have you been there?
This is great. I mean, there's a lot to unpack with that scene, but what I really love about it is the way he describes everything. It's really like he's getting into the mind of the average person, and it's such relatable stories. I can just imagine kind of the laughter of acknowledgement, the laughter of people who've just been like, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And the other thing he does to really draw the audience in and keep them involved in the story, he keeps saying things like, do you remember when you were in love? He's asking you questions to help you participate in the story. And then at the end he says, have you been there? All these touches just make it more personal, more relatable, more connecting to the audience.
In stories, the same hormones and neurotransmitters can be released. Hormones like vasopressin, oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, endorphins. And do you know what? That's what I would like to do during my talk. I would like to induce 3 hormones into your brain. I call it the angel's cocktail, so it's a nice cocktail. I would like to start with radically increasing your dopamine levels. And I need your consent on this. Is it okay?
So again, he's using this audience participation factor. When he says, I would like to radically increase your dopamine levels. Again, body language to signify something going up.
Start with radically increasing your dopamine level.
And then he says, is that okay?
and I need your consent on this. Is it okay?
This back and forth interaction with the audience, it makes it feel more casual. It makes it feel like he's talking to a friend, like he's sitting there with you, and keeps the audience engaged and participating in what he's saying.
About 6 years ago, I received a phone call from a woman who represented one of the biggest training companies in Scandinavia, and she said, "Hey David, we've got a lot of trainers in presentation skills and in rhetorics, and we would like to increase the level of all of these. And we think you are a perfect pick. Would you like to come to a meeting?" I'm like, wow, I'm honored, I'd love to. And I come up to Stockholm, and I'm going to their office, and just as I am going to pull the handle down, what I don't know then is that I'm walking into one of the absolute worst meetings I am ever going to have in my life. But I don't know that yet, so it's okay.
I love this as it's a way to create suspense. If you want to think of how to create drama or suspense, it's sentences like that where he says, "Little did I know I was about to walk into one of the worst meetings of my life." Usually when it's something, the worst or the best of your life, it's a very emotive sentence. And straight away it gets everyone honed in to what you're saying because you feel like something big is coming.
The beautiful effects of oxytocin are the following. You become more generous, you trust me more, and you bond to me. Do you want to do that? All right. All right, so this was 9 months have passed, and it was a planned cesarean.
What he does here is another great example of his congruence between his message, what he says, how he says it, what he does. He's talking here about oxytocin, about bonding and trust with people. So he actually enacts that kind of body language, the same kind of tonality, to be congruent with these elements. So he sits on a chair so that he's closer to the audience level. It makes him seem more relatable to the audience, more connecting to the audience. He slows down a bit, speaks quieter, looks down. This is him becoming vulnerable. He was genuinely becoming vulnerable on that stage. You could hear it in his voice, and you could feel that he had something important to share.
And the little brother, who was 5 years of age at that point of time, he was kind of really looking forward to what's going to happen. He was going to become a big brother. And he'd helped us pick out the wallpaper, he'd helped choose the bed linen. He'd even saved his own pocket money to buy a little stuffed animal, which was placed on the pillowcase. And about 2 days before the planned cesarean, something happened. Something wasn't right. The parents something was off. And the day before, there was simply no movement in the stomach. There was no heartbeat. You couldn't feel or hear anything at all. So the parents were rushed into hospital, lay down on a bed, and the doctor comes in, checks the stomach, looks at me, and sees what I see, and that is that the heart is no longer beating for this child. This was me 9 years ago. It was the worst thing I've ever experienced in my entire life. And I don't know, can you just imagine what you have to tell, how you tell that to a 5-year-old? Can you just imagine that? Because he's home there waiting, anticipation for this coming event.
So we know something impactful was coming, something big was coming. And then he kind of has the big reveal for this story where he says, "That was me 9 years ago." Suddenly our hearts go out to him. And then he says, imagine telling that to a 5-year-old. Just imagine that. He accesses those emotions, lets us into the vulnerability, and it's all very connecting. And this sort of urge, this invitation for us to imagine what it would feel like telling a 5-year-old. I mean, it puts us in his shoes. It lets us see things from his vantage point, and then makes it easier for us to take in his emotions. Looking at the talk itself, what David did here, to show us the power of storytelling, he used storytelling. This is a very clever thing to do. The purpose of his talk was to show us the magic and science of storytelling as well. So he actually used the magic and the science of storytelling to achieve the purpose. Again, brilliant. For each hormone, for cortisol, adrenaline, He doesn't just tell us what they are. He actually shows us.
The devil's cocktail has high levels of cortisol and adrenaline, and they feel like this. Ah! Sorry to do that to you.
He uses a story to create the hormone within us, and then when we're feeling it, he then tells us how to do it. He's actually demonstrated the idea and applied it to use. He's proven that it works. We can't question or doubt it because he's actually done it on us. This is such an effective way of teaching. It's far more memorable than the usual stuff you'd see. This talk, if I think about the talk, it has achieved so many purposes, so many different things. He's taught us about the different hormones in an original and memorable way. He's convinced us of the power of storytelling so that we'll use it ourselves. And at the same time, he's entertained everybody for 17 minutes. This was such an incredible talk. I could have said so much more about it. David JP Phillips is clearly a world-class public speaker, someone I admire and someone I have so much to learn from. And I hope there were some parts that you can use yourself to improve your own communication. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. There'll be more of this type of public speaking reaction videos coming, so make sure to subscribe for more videos. Thanks for joining me, everyone. I'm Matt. We'll see you next time.